Longtime elementary school teachers, which of your former students surprised you the most by their adult life outcomes or personality? There was a kid in my high school class who had severe dyslexia and acalcula, and although he clearly had a sharp mind when you spoke to him, it wasn't clear he was going to go far. His main interest back in school was blowing shit up and building bombs, and he went off to mining school so that he could work with explosives. He got his PhD before I got my bachelor's, for building a robot that goes down mines and uses lasers to make a 3D map of the mine, doing a week's work for a surveying team in a couple hours, and without putting human lives at risk. He's charming, his wife and kids are charming, and he builds robots with frickin' lasers on them. Not bad for the kid couldn't read and only cared about blowing shit up. I teach English as a second language and I had a kid who spoke Arabic who barely could master English in the beginning, to be expected of course. Well, 8 years later he's on his way to being an astrophysicist. He came to school to find me to tell me last year and I've never had a prouder moment teaching. He told me I was the only one who believed in him. I had a student that used to get into fights and was extremely aggressive and violent towards others. On the last day of 5th grade his last words to me and his class were "fuck you." Many years later he came back to the school I'd been teaching at and looked for me so he could give me a big hug and apologize. In his words, "I was garbage when I was here. Thank you for putting up with me and I'm sorry." I cried like a baby. I was so proud of him. Kindergarten teacher called my sister a loser that won't amount to anything in life. So far, she's done a tour in Afghanistan, wife, EMT, and now is in the SWAT team. I think she amounted to some pretty badass stuff. The student whose social skills were non-existent and whose academics were equally as troubling is in college taking nuclear physics. I swear he was easily like 3 grades behind when I knew him in primary/junior grades, Canada. Not me but know a guy, lovely quiet chap who lived to draw. Teacher said his work was no good. Went on to be a senior effects artist and later works for a major computer games company and can of course, draw. I guess my mom might count since she's worked at the elementary school I attended since 1993, but she recently told me about one of my elementary school classmates. I was actually pretty good friends with him, but I thought he was a bit slow. And apparently, he had been evaluated for learning disorders several times in early grade school. He apparently just started a surgery fellowship at a prestigious hospital in Philadelphia. He definitely worked very hard in grade school and middle school, and now that I look back, he definitely sought out the smart kids in class and tried to befriend them and see how they thought. Imagine getting a ticket for a busted brake light from your former student whom you thought was going to be a criminal someday. I had to be tutored for reading during elementary school. The same teacher came to my house after school a few times a week to help me. Years later, my mom ran into her and she asked how I was doing. She was so incredibly happy and shocked to hear I was an English major applying to library science graduate programs. I was voted most likely to burn a book, ended up writing one. I had severe depression and anxiety among other things, stopped going to school at around 13 and fully dropped/tested out at maybe 16. I started going to community college at 17, and at 21 I'm finally transferring to a really good university. I have a 3.7 GPA and am majoring in cell and molecular biology. Family moved to Canada when I was 11. Spoke no English and got picked on in my first year, GR6. In GR7 and 8 I failed all science and history tests due to language, but teachers just gave me enough marks to move on to the next grade. I spent more time studying and with encouragement of my GR11 chemistry teacher I believed in myself. By end of high school, I was ranked top 1% in Canada in math, chemistry and physics competitions. This led me to great school and a great career so far. Thank you, Ms. Harple. Not me, but a kid who used to be my friend. He was studious. He got good grades. Teachers loved him. He was well behaved. He wasn't bullied. He didn't bully other kids. He had a lot of friends. He wasn't popular, but he wasn't unpopular. He was definitely more popular than me though. No one had a problem with him. Since he got good grades his parents let him do whatever he wanted. They bought him whatever he wanted. He had the latest video games and consoles as they came out. We loved sleeping over his house because we could stay up all night, jump on the trampoline at 2 in the morning, and we didn't even have to sneak out for mischief. We could just walk out the door. Anyways, he moved in 8th grade. I was sad. A couple years back someone sends me a Facebook message of a local article. This guy stabbed someone 23 times and is awaiting a murder trial. I have no clue where his life took a hard left turn, but it did clearly. Not mine but my mom's story. She used to teach the second grade, and there was a kid who was ruthlessly bullied because he had another finger on his hand. He didn't come from a very good background and had to work jobs in the middle of school for his family. This is pretty common for low-income families in India. He was shouted at a lot by the principal as he missed like half of the school, so my mom told him to come to our house so she could tutor him every few days. He's now studying mechanical engineering at IIT, very prestigious university in India, and reached to my mom on Facebook and thanked her. My best friend got kicked out of his former high school because he would never understand math. Now he's in the second years of astrophysics PhD and he's certainly going places. I've been on our PTA for a long time, does that count? There was a very skinny quiet kid who was super smart. The other kids picked on him quite a lot, but he never stood up for himself. I always thought he would work for NASA or something as he was so smart. I saw his LinkedIn a few months ago and he is now a prison officer at a maximum security prison. I think this applies to me. I was the kid that never passed exams the first time. Kids would tell me in middle school I would never graduate. First semester of high school I didn't pass 7 out of 14 classes. Right now I'm halfway through a master's program for bioscience engineering at one of the best universities in Europe. I would still call myself a mediocre student, but it's getting better. My thesis will be about vertical farming, and for the first time in my life as a student, I'm excited. A mate of mine does some building work for a guy he went to school with 30 plus years ago. The high school principal stood him up in front of the entire school assembly and said, "Take a look at this boy. This is a boy that will never amount to anything." That boy just sold his house for $20 million to buy a bigger one. My dad was a bad kid in school. Like really bad. Fought teachers, suspended half the year, expelled from school dances, etc. Anybody in their right mind would bet their life savings against the chance he'd make anything of himself professionally. Well, now he's 49. Never went to college, but worked his way up to his current job making 6 figures and had been offered promotions to pay more. Talking to him and meeting him, you'd never guess he was probably the worst kid in the entire school district. Plus, he'd beat my ass if I ever did the shit he did. I had no social skills and was way behind in grade 9. Dropped out that year, spent the rest of the time I should have been in high school fucking around, and now I'm in university tying a chemistry course and about to graduate with a BS in biology. My grades are good enough that I am seriously considering med school or law school. K-12 doesn't mean shit. It's not a fit for all people. Not a teacher, but my best friend in high school was the most picked on kid in a high school of 4,000 students. He definitely wasn't much of an academic and seemed destined for barely getting through life. He's now worked his way up in fast food, has franchised a couple Dairy Queens, and worked for Homeland Security in between.